Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. This is actually going to be my first video, and today's video will be a POV kind of video of me doing some after dark street photography around central London. I've only ever gone to London during the day before, and I've never really experienced what the city's like at night. I decided to go on a Friday because I thought that would be the busiest time and I wanted to make it easier for myself. I brought along my Nikon Z8, and while it may be a bit big for street, it's also my only camera. So until I can afford to have a dedicated street camera, I'll have to stick with this. I'm using the Nikkor 50mm f1.8s lens, which is actually a phenomenal lens and it's worked really well for me shooting street. It renders really sharp and contrasty images and I have no complaints. It's also one of the cheapest options in the Nikon system secondhand, so it's a really nice investment for the system if you like the 50mm focal length. Just remember, there's no barrier to street photography and you can do it and get amazing results on pretty much any camera. Enough gear talk, onto settings. I used auto ISO with a minimum shutter speed of 1/250th of a second. I don't really worry about pushing ISO too high, as this camera can handle it, and anyway, there's plenty of denoising tools available right now if you're really fussy about noise. I decided to stay at f1.8 for most of the night though, since I really did need all the light I could get going into this night of shooting. I always like to stroll around this area around Waterloo Station as it helps me get into the street photography mindset.
Patterns these lights make are cool.
I've seen many other photographers do the same thing, so it's really important to get warmed up before diving into things.
This place is empty.
These may not be my best images from the night, but they serve their purpose well. Sometimes I have to wait for a trigger event to really put me in the special mood for photography. Whether that's a great moment being just laid down in front of me or some great light, or just looking through some inspiration on Instagram, a little boost is helpful a lot of the time and can completely elevate my level of confidence in shooting. There was no such thing on this day, but thankfully I was already in the mood.
Let's get to London Eye. Where is that thing? There it is.
I eventually got to this plaza near the London Eye, and I had really expected it to be packed, but there was literally nobody there, and it caught me off guard.
This place is absolutely deserted. No. That's cool. Get yourself some fish and chips.
I decided to move on up to the river and walk along it for a little bit. I did find this really nice scene with this bright screen creating some nice silhouette images. Or at least I would have if I hadn't gotten distracted by this bridge. I still really wanted to find an area with some signs of human life in it, so I started walking to nearest tube station across the river. I did hang around the entrance for a bit and thought maybe there could be something interesting going on, but I didn't really have much luck with it. After a bit, I finally hopped on the underground to head towards the busiest parts of London. While I was walking down, I did try to get a few shots. I did like this one with the bag, which is probably the cleanest thing in this yellowed and overrun tube station. One thing I forgot about the tube was that it gets really hot down there. I was not enjoying that with a jumper on and a jacket, and it was also a perfect time to realise I'd forgotten my water bottle. I exited the station and found myself in Piccadilly Circus. I was glad to find that there were actually some people there, and got to brainstorming some compositions. I'm really annoyed that I overexposed this one, as I think it could have turned out really well, but the highlights on the billboards being blown out kind of ruins the picture for me. My thirst quickly moved to the forefront of my mind, and so it didn't distract me, I had to cave in and go and buy some overpriced water at the nearest place I could find. With my thirst quenched, I got back to walking around the square, but nothing really jumped out at me. When I'm in this situation, I always remember to just keep looking, as something will always eventually pop out. I eventually found this nice scene across the road, where I could get some silhouettes against these strange tourist trap stores across the road. For some reason there's so many of these around central London now, but I guess ripping off tourists is just how business works nowadays. I did get a funny shot of this random guy. I shot it from the hip, a kind of no looker, and I think it got lined up pretty perfectly somehow. I don't think it's a great image, but it's always good to practice those hip firing skills for when you do really need them. I found this nice background here with the store, and I tried to get some silhouettes of people walking past. This is definitely the night of silhouettes, and I guess that's just what was on my mind that day. I focused on the ground where a subject would ideally walk past, but I didn't really end up with a properly focused image, and in hindsight I really should have just focused on the background for this shot in particular. After that, it was time to move on to a different location, so I started to walk towards Oxford Circus.
Oh, this guy looks cool.
Getting a few more silhouettes, like a "please sponsor me," I walked down this avenue and found what could have been a good scene. However, I did have to crop a lot on the final image to get something decent out of it. I think this picture needed a bit too much editing to make it work, but I guess someone looking at the photo will never know that. I was hitting a kind of creative drought at this point, so I switched to shutter priority mode of about a quarter of a second to try and get some panning motion blur shots. None of them really turned out great, as I wasn't able to perfectly match the speed of any of the subjects.
Try and do tracking shots, but
I do like the bus one since it seems very alive, but that's not at all the vibe I was getting this night anyway. At this point the city really was empty, and I was getting pretty tired as well. I encountered basically nothing as I was walking up to Oxford Circus, and once I was there it was, again, empty. Which I guess makes sense, given all the shops were closed. I should really have thought this through and either gone earlier in the day, or I should go in the winter months when the sun sets a lot earlier in the day as well. I decided to get a final shot using this little billboard here. I just waited for the right subject to line up, and I eventually got the shot I was looking for. Heading back down into the tube, I was feeling pretty disappointed with how little I walked away from London with. I was expecting a lot more lights and atmosphere, but ultimately it didn't end up happening the way I expected. Maybe it was where I went, or just the day in particular, but that's alright. I do, in the end, enjoy facing challenges like this, and looking back, I did get a few images I was pretty happy with. After grabbing a few final shots, I boarded the tube and got my last picture of the night, of this dude sitting alone in the tube. I fired it from the hip again, and I actually think this shot reflects pretty well the vibes I was getting from London that night. The gloomy and empty atmosphere which I really wasn't expecting. All in all, I think it was a successful night in London, especially for a beginner's attempt, and it was a really interesting change to how I normally shoot the city. If I had to change one thing about it, it would definitely be the time I went, as I only arrived there at about 8:30 PM, whereas I really should have gotten there about 7 to have the most people. I'd like to give you guys a big thank you if you watch this video to the end. I'm looking to upload more videos like this, so please leave some feedback in the comment section, as it will greatly help me make future videos. Also, remember to like and subscribe with the notification bell on, as it helps me in the algorithm and you'll get notified of any future videos I make. So, A final thank you and goodbye.